This is why you should get scalp micropigmentation instead of a hair transplant. So what is scalp micropigmentation? Scalp micropigmentation is a cosmetic tattoo that will replicate the look of short hair follicles, or commonly referred to as stubble. Scalp micropigmentation can treat a variety of different forms of hair loss in both males and females. Hair transplants. What is a hair transplant? Hair transplants are essentially relocating your own hair from the back and sides of your head, commonly referred to as the donor area, to the affected areas of hair loss. More often than not, they will be through your hairline and crown. Why you should get scalp micropigmentation as opposed to a hair transplant? Well, for me, the biggest reason is you are guaranteed a result. You are guaranteed a result that not only is effective at combating hair loss or concealing the signs of hair loss, but it will look 100% natural if performed correctly. Scalp micropigmentation is a fraction of the cost of a hair transplant and requires little to no downtime at all. With everything in life, I believe there is a big list of pros versus cons when you're making a decision. And in my opinion, you'll find that there are more cons associated with hair transplants than there are pros, and more pros with scalp micropigmentation than there are cons. Now, that's not to say that these two hair loss solutions cannot work together in synchronization, but that will be a video for another day. This video in particular is why you should get scalp micropigmentation and not a hair transplant if you don't already have a hair transplant. If you're in Australia and you're considering a hair transplant, be prepared to spend tens of thousands of dollars. Otherwise, everyone knows about Turkey. You can fly to Turkey and you can get a transplant done for a fraction of the cost in Turkey. When you go to Turkey for a hair transplant, you are more often than not just another number. Once you have your hair transplant performed, you will not see those surgeons again. When you have a hair transplant, you have to take medication for the foreseeable future to maintain the results of your hair transplant. No ifs or buts. If you do not take finasteride to stop the conversion of testosterone to DHT, your hair loss is going to continue to progress. Transplanted hair is not safe from hair loss. Then they will also often recommend topical minoxidil or the two medications compounded together. They will come with a long list of nasty side effects. So some of these side effects may include skin rashes, low energy, low sex drive, and erectile dysfunction. Something that no one wants to have. Another massive con, in my opinion, to a hair transplant is the fact that you are essentially just moving the problem. You are going to pull your own hair out of these donor areas and relocate that to the front of your scalp. I often say to people who inquire with us for scalp micropigmentation and they are considering a hair transplant, the best analogy I can provide is you're robbing your mate Pete to pay your mate Paul. It just doesn't make sense to me. So guys, you got to remember that a hair transplant, it's a surgery. So for the days after the surgery, you have to sleep sitting upright. There's often lots of blood and bandages and scabs and all sorts of nasty things happening underneath. And you have such a cumbersome experience with the weeks following your transplant. So no sweat for 4 to 6 weeks. So for you guys that work a labor-intensive job or outside or exercise regularly, or even if you're just generally a heavy sweater, this is something that you need to consider. I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking this guy seems to just talk about all the cons associated with hair transplants and none of the cons associated with scalp micropigmentation. Well, I'll inform you of a few cons that I can think of to do with scalp micropigmentation. The first one would be there is no real hair from a scalp micropigmentation treatment. It will not reverse the signs of your hair loss or stop the progression of hair loss. So those cons will also carry right over to a hair transplant. So a hair transplant will not stop the progression of hair loss, and the transplanted hair is not safe from hair loss. So without the use of medication, and even sometimes with using the medication, that transplanted hair will still fall out. I often say to people, there is no perfect cure to hair loss or solution for hair loss. And you only have to look at people like Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos, richest men in the world. Donald Trump wears a wig. Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, is completely bald. If there was a solution out there that was absolutely perfect, I'm telling you now, these guys would have it. You guys now understand some of the pros, some of the cons of each treatment and why I think one is better than the other. And like I mentioned to you before, there is still a place for these two treatments to work together. So if you do already have a hair transplant and you are looking to increase the results or the effectiveness of your hair transplant, scalp micropigmentation is a great way to enhance your hair transplant. It can cover the scarring associated with the transplant as well as increase the density and make the treatment overall look more natural. If you've made it to the end of this video and you are now considering a scalp micropigmentation treatment, I urge you guys to reach out to us here at Scalp Revival and we can provide a detailed treatment plan to suit you and answer any further questions that you may have. Thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.